Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Well, great week on the sports calendar. We've got conference championship. All that stuff is happening this week, really, in hoops. I remember, I'm curious if you have like a similar like experience when at least it feels like I did this every year. And I'm sure I didn't do it every year, but it just feels like it. Like I remember being in college. My absolute favorite time of year was coming home for spring break. You've just finished midterms, whatever, not finals. And you're watching the conference tournaments all weekend. And then I would usually go somewhere with my buddies that following week. I think it was either Illinois State or Iowa. And we would just go there to watch the NCAA tournament. Like that whole weekend. It was awesome. Some of the most fun times I've had doing exactly that. Did you have like a tradition that you did once you were like old enough to be like, hey, like I have friends at other schools and stuff. And if our spring breaks align, it's almost actually better if your spring breaks don't align. And that way you can kind of plan the schedule to be able to at least go with a couple of your buddies somewhere and then meet up at, while they're still going to be on campus.
Yeah, so Full Sail was weird because we didn't really have like spring break in a traditional sense. Like I told that story about me like missing a month or failing a month because I went on spring break and because they just want you to be working the whole time you're there. So I got to do fun stuff with my friends. It was more of like I would work ahead and then take classes off and then go party with them. And, lucky I never really did like the overdone kind of like, Miami PCB thing. That's actually the one that I like missed the class for.
Same.
And so it ended up with just kind of like me and my boys would go find somewhere cool and hang out, like somewhere kind of more like chill off the map. Cause I'd be like, hey, I can't go crazy or anything cause I got to be keeping up with stuff. But yeah, it was always a good time. And to your point about March Madness, it's like, and I think part of that too is just like you guys are in kind of the basketball hub, like when you're all these big cities, stuff like that. For us in Hoover, it was like, let's go to bomb hours, go eat some wings and watch the game,
It's the best. So, like I always felt bad because I would build my spring break around watching college basketball. that was going to be it. Like my junior year went to my buddies. My buddies had his aunt and uncle lived in Charlotte, and we went to the first round of the tournament that Kyrie was on Duke, and he was just coming back. So that would have been 2011. And
one of Kyrie's 4 games for Duke. You got to see that? That's crazy,
right? Actually, maybe he wasn't even back. Maybe he wasn't even playing in that game. I don't really remember, but I do remember like going all day and being in Charlotte. And the entire time we're going on this trip that was just excellent. Like one of my favorite trips that I've been on. The entire time I'm just thinking about, all right, how am I going to watch this window of basketball here? How am I going to watch this window there? It was the best. It was absolutely awesome. So yeah, it's conference championship week in full force. We have a ton.
Honestly, man, I think that's a good idea for like one of the figuring it out things. It's like the lengths that you'll go to watch games, because that's on New Year's Eve. That's what it's become lately with the finals, where it's like, oh, you got to kind of pick your poison. Like if you're not a guy like you who is fully invested, it's hard. And your team's not playing like me. It's like, because if what LSU was playing, I was with my mom. Like there was no way I was going to go do anything else. But if it's like, hey, I got to go watch TCU Michigan or whatever, like that's like kind of a good point. That's like the sickos like us and probably a lot of listeners, they're just watching, and it's like, what do you mean? It's noon in Miami. Why do you want to go watch Seton Hall play?
Exactly. There's something about having that conversation with someone that's like, wait a minute, you either get it or you don't. There's really not a whole lot of in between. But yeah, the coming weeks will be spent watching a lot of basketball. We're going to talk a lot of football today. That's the plan. Great show coming up. Bobby Carpenter coming up in a little bit to talk all things Ohio State, the agent of chaos in college football. We've got the jersey contest. You are wearing something right now that you have teased, and for those who are only listening to us audio only, you should follow us on YouTube, Saturday Down South on YouTube. But all I can see is Vanderbilt, and it's a basketball jersey. So we're going to have a story behind that one.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt about it. And then we got Lad of the Week as well. So, Will, I texted you this idea on Friday, and it's something that, look, I'm admittedly – I think that this is one of those subjects – in which it's more exciting to talk about the possibilities than what is actually happening. And that is, we are assessing the potential post-spring quarterback transfers. It's kind of like the NFL draft in that way, and it's more fun to talk about the possibilities than what actually happens in
free agency. It's like NBA or NFL free agency. It's like, this guy's unhappy, he might ask for a trade. If it didn't happen, it's like, on to the next thing.
Exactly. Free agency right now in the NFL, as we're recording this, is popping off. We've got new guys going to new teams left and right. DeAndre Swift goes to the Bears instead of Saquon. I'm not bitter at all. I love DeAndre Swift. You know this. But like these things that are more fun to talk about than actually like when the games happen, you're like, oh, okay, this is a little bit different. And so for the post spring quarterback market that is in the transfer portal, so far it has been wildly underwhelming these past few years, at least as it compares to the post regular season portal market at the quarterback position. I went back last year.
Can't talk to me, an LSU fan, about that because we got our savior in this window.
And, I mean, look, it's unfair to call Jaden Daniels a post spring transfer. He transferred mid spring. Like
True.
He was on campus still at that point. He didn't like show up to campus in June. I think he was officially on campus in March. So it's like I can't even put Jaden in that category. Spring practice had already begun by the time that happened. But so it was before true windows were open, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that was the case. Yeah, because 22, we were still figuring out like what that process was going to be like. It was a lot more fluid. I remember the Mizzou thing was rumored for a bit with him. So yeah, it's just it's just been typically very underwhelming. And last year, these names, the post spring quarterback transfers, TJ Finley.
Again,
yeah, of course. TJ Finley just penciled in every single year. Tyler Buckner, who I think is playing lacrosse, TBD on that. Haven't gotten an update on that if he is officially doing that at Notre Dame. Peyton Thorne, who this will not be his first mention on this podcast, obviously. Ben Bryant, Northwestern, Cincinnati. Sure, of course.
You've all heard of him.
Yeah. Casey Thompson, another one, just like TJ Finley, just penciled in every single year. Jalen Henderson, who, look, at the time, no idea who he was, I'll be honest, but eventually becomes a guy that I find myself banging the drum for. I don't think he's going to be an all bang the drum team guy, but yeah, that's it. Those are the most notable names last year in this window at quarterback.
Some people in a random bar in Amsterdam think Jalen Henderson's the best quarterback ever. So, because I was like, this guy, we can't stop this guy.
He looked good. He looked really good that day, man. I'm just saying, if he won that bowl game, just who knows? Maybe we're having a different conversation about him. That's probably not the best way for me to sell intrigue for a segment, but I will say, in this era, there is always a possibility that your team could lose or gain a quarterback in one of those windows. So I do think this is one of those things that could impact a lot of teams in the SEC. And who knows? Maybe in this NIL market that, look, the NCAA can no longer punish you for NIL-related things. Maybe someone recognizes that there could be a golden opportunity with how little competition there is. And who knows, maybe a very respected, well-known quarterback is going to hit the market post-spring, and we're going to have a different conversation about it. This isn't just for the Auburns of the world who are just praying that the post-spring quarterback market is a little bit more prosciutto than bologna. There's nothing wrong with bologna, but you're doing it to get by. Whereas prosciutto is the meat that you hope you have stuck in your teeth an hour after you eat it, just so that you can keep tasting more prosciutto. I'm not assuming a prosciutto quarterback will be in the portal unless it's an obvious money grab sort of situation, and it's a guy who doesn't really want to go anywhere and he just wants to enter just to be able to beef up his own NIL market with the team that he's currently on. Again, I think there are a little bit of complications with that within your own locker room. I wouldn't bank on the Lane Kiffin trend becoming a thing, but the Stanley Hudsons of the world, they could show themselves. You could just say, hey, I want more money. I'm not afraid to go to Utica. All right. This is what I got to do to be able to make my own market. It could happen. We're still very early in this thing. It doesn't mean it'll never happen. It just hasn't really quite happened in that post-spring quarterback NIL market. A little bit different than when Joe Burrow was doing it circa 2018, pre-NIL. You get what I'm saying. So most of this
I'm going to say two things really quick. First off, that's like a 2007 Lil Wayne bar right there. Y'all, I'm prosciutto. You're bologna. All right. I like that. Second, something that you just said, I think is really interesting in that a lot of the quarterback movement here, you know what they say, if you got two quarterbacks, you don't have one quarterback. Well, the guy leaving or entering the portal means you have your quarterback. So I think we do see some of that in spring after a stiff competition. One guy says, hey, I'm out. Well, guess what, son? You just found your quarterback. Like it or not, that's going to be your guy if there was a battle. It was no longer here.
The tough part about that, because in an ideal world, yes, you would have that sort of transparency. But there is now more of a desire than ever for coaches to want to be as coy as possible, to split those first team reps, and to make it to where there really isn't that established hierarchy. And you could see places where we feel like it's an obvious starter that really don't have any sort of hierarchy established. And the coach is saying the most positive things possible about the second and third string guys because quarterback depth is so hard to come by. It has never been more difficult to come by because of the lack of restrictions with transferring and all those things that are associated with it. So, yeah, ideally, you're right. That would be the case. I don't know that that necessarily will fuel a lot of these decisions. And some of these could be just looking at the situation, looking around going, man, I'm not in position really where I feel like I'm going to be the starter. And it's not going to be because of what a coach said. It's going to be, look, I'm just going to go and try and find a new start somewhere else. So we're going to discuss some of those guys today. That's going to be the plan. We're going to discuss some of those guys and some of those teams as well. This conversation, you know where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Ty Simpson, Will.
Okay.
Look, remember that the SEC portal rules still somehow exist, stating that the post-spring window, you can't do intra-conference transfers without losing a year of eligibility or without sitting out a year, I guess is what it would be. So assume as of this point that if you're an SEC transfer, you're leaving the conference. That's the most likely scenario. It's dumb. It's stupid. I hope it gets changed. It needs to get changed. If that changes, I want Ty Simpson crossing enemy lines. I do. I want him going to Auburn because I believe Hugh Freeze could do great things with him.
Yeah.
I'd be so on board with that. Like, I have sold some Ty Simpson stock. I have. Lord knows I had a lot this time last year. I don't want to say that the stock has gone from prosciutto to bologna because that's unfair. Prosciutto to salami, maybe. That's better? Right?
Listen, we're aged in the meat. We don't know how it's aged because we haven't seen it, but we just know it's not on the shelf.
Bologna's not the best thing to age.
Right. And it might be bologna when he comes out, but it might be prosciutto. Have that nice little marble on it. We'll see.
That's a good point. You just never know. But what we do know is that the sample size for the redshirt freshman last year wasn't particularly good. He is still, however, attractive for a team because he is entering year 3. So you're not getting some 18-year-old that's still got to put on weight, still got to go through the strength program, all that stuff. Yet at the same time, he's still got 3 years of eligibility left. So that's really nice if you're looking to build for the future. Maybe not necessarily one of these coaches that feels like they could be on the hot seat this year, but there could still be a market if he decides to transfer. What we need to remember is that Jalen Milroe returned, but he's still got 2 years of eligibility left. Okay? So it's not a foregone conclusion that Jalen Milroe is off to the NFL after this year. If I'm betting, do I think Jalen Milroe goes to the NFL after 2024? Yes. But what happens if he gets hurt? He misses 4 or 5 games. It's kind of a lost season. It's a little bit of a difficult transition with the scheme. You just never know with these things. So that kind of looms over someone like Ty Simpson, or at least I think it should loom. You also need to remember, if you're of the belief that he would never go, this wasn't the staff that recruited him. That's important. And on top of that, they brought in a decorated quarterback from their previous place, Washington, Austin Mack.
Yep.
And he's entering year 2. So technically, he's got a year more of experience in the offense than Ty Simpson does. So look, it's not even a given that Ty Simpson is a backup. I think he would be the backup if he stayed. I would assume he would be. But you just never know if that system is going to take. Maybe the terminology is a little bit different. Maybe he's struggling with some of the elements, and it's not necessarily a smooth transition in that regard. And he looks up post-spring and says, buddy, I got to find a new home. If he does leave the conference, I think he could have a pretty legitimate Power 5 market. He could start tomorrow at a place like Wake Forest or Maryland, both of which already brought in upperclassmen transfers, but typically don't really get a crack at a former 5-star guy like Simpson, and could be interesting. there's another team besides Auburn in conference that would be all sorts of spicy if the rules get changed. Again, the rules would have to get changed. I don't think it'll happen, but never rule out a coach that, is like, hey, let's just see what we can do here. Let's see what we can do, and I'm going to trust my guys to be able to make this decision. I just talked about why a coach on the hot seat probably wouldn't go after a Ty Simpson, but you just never know when you've got a wild card in your room like Robert Patrick Petrino. You never know.
That's true. One thing about him is he will take anybody.
What about Arkansas, Will? Because Ty Simpson, Connor Wigman, they got a lot of similarities in skill set. They really do. Skill set, background, and look, I was encouraged by what we saw from Wigman in Petrino's offense last year. If they end spring camp and Pittman just says, Taylor Green, our Boise State transfer, I know he's taking the first team reps, but man, I just think he makes too many mistakes at this stage of his career. I don't want to pin my hopes on him. Maybe Malachi Singleton, the redshirt freshman, he's not ready just yet. They're not worried about hurt feelings at Arkansas. I can tell you that.
One thing about Arkansas, they're not worried about hurt feelings. Yeah.
How many times in Bobby Petrino's life has he ever worried about hurt feelings?
Zero.
Yeah. So bringing in somebody else like that, I don't necessarily think that would be out of the realm of possibility, but that's the spicier one. That's probably more of a long shot, given the fact that I think they addressed that with their current situation with Taylor Green, and they're gonna let that play out.
Yeah, I think one thing that's worth mentioning for Ty Simpson too is he's already crossed enemy lines once, right? He's from Tennessee. Yep. His dad is the head coach at UT Martin. So he's already probably, again, not going to get into the weeds of this, but I'm assuming he's probably kind of had that conversation with his dad at some point. He's like, hey, I'm kind of getting this 5-star territory, 4-star, like maybe, hey, how's that going to look? I think I'm going to Alabama. And, that's just what I've seen from like coaches' kids talking about, Jalen Hurts and stuff. And, Joe Burrow was the same thing, coach's kid. Those guys understand the game in terms of the new business of the game. They don't have the same, because coaches move around too. I'm sure that over his life, he's seen his dad change a couple of jobs. So I don't know that situation, but that matters when you've already made a business decision to come to Alabama. You've already proven, hey, I'm not going to emotionally go Vols. I'm going to go to the hometown team. So going to Alabama was the big jump, not then going to Auburn when you say, hey, they already got their Ty Simpson from, in that offense that they already told was going to be the future. He already came here for a reason, and, to your point, it's not like Ty Simpson has shown like he has like this big game on film that everyone can look back at, right. A la so many quarterbacks we've seen where it's like, we just got to get this, the Georgia Tech, Jordan Jefferson. We got to get that guy to come back, like there's not really that good tape on him that fans are clamoring for either. So yeah, I think they trust the coaching staff as they should. And if there's a disconnect there, then maybe there's a better fit.
Definitely more of a roll of the dice eval because of that limited sample size. You would just, even a bowl game with limited rosters would probably make you feel better about it. But if I had to bet, I would say Ty Simpson does not end up being a QB1 at Alabama. That's the most likely course of action, whether that happens post-spring, whether he waits for this year to wrap up, who knows? We'll wait and see how that plays out. Speaking of Alabama, Will, what about Dylan Lonergan? Copy and paste what I said about Austin Mack here. I'm going to warn you, as a child of 90s Nickelodeon, this might be a little bit before your time here. I will refer to Austin to, I almost just did it there. I will refer to Austin Mack as Alex Mack, who was played by one of my first childhood crushes, Larissa Olenek, also the star of the all-time great, kind of underrated, a little bit more of a cult following, 10 Things I Hate About You.
I thought you was going to say the center from Cal that played on the Falcons. But no, this is 90s Disney, Alex.
Yeah, no. Okay. No, big Larissa Olenek fan, very much so. She was the jam back in the day. As for Lonergan, this is going to sound really anti-Bama, but everyone else in the SEC understands this because everyone else is old enough to remember what these coaching changes are actually like, not just with your entire roster. Quarterback rooms change so drastically with coaching changes. They do, just like that. And even if you kind of keep a similar system in place in today's day and age, just assume that quarterback room year to year is going to look very, very different. Bama's already had this, so I'm not breaking any news. They had this with Holstein. They had it with Julian Sayin. They both found new homes. Holstein's off to Pitt. Sayin's off to Ohio State. Lonergan could go, They brought in Austin Mack, not Alex Mack, a guy in my same class. And even if the coaching staff who brought him in thinks I'm better, I'm still probably no better than third string with a new coaching staff. Mm-hmm. So there's a possibility that he could look up and say, let's find a different place. Lonergan could still probably be like a third string guy at a place like Ole Miss, who has a starter entering his final year of eligibility, and then an unproven backup in Walker Howard, who's got a little bit of an injury history as well. And then Austin Simmons is there as well. But remember, he's the guy that jumped 2 classes, reclassified, and is still only 18 years old. He's going to be 18 years old forever in my mind. That'll be the case for Austin Simmons. But it's Lane. Never rule that out. Never rule out the idea of going after someone like that. I mean, it's not just Pete Golding. He'll take anybody from Bama and try and make him into somebody great. He would almost do that just out of spite, and Bama was a part of that recruiting process. But again,
speaking of that, what's going on with Spencer Sanders, bro?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer. Could not tell you. Weird. Just weird. It's the only way that I can describe it, because at this time last year, I'm saying this guy's going to end up being the starter. I'm not as big of a Jackson Dart guy. And a year later, I'm like, yeah, Jackson Dart's one of the 10 best returning quarterbacks in college football. Spencer Sanders, I can't even think about what number he was this past year. 3, maybe?
I don't know. Last time I remember physically seeing him was in the Tulane game, like in terms of like a play that he made. So yeah, it's just to your point, Lane will take anybody.
Yeah. So that would make a lot of sense. But more likely, again, because you need a rule change to be able to do the intra-conference transfer. So could be a situation like Georgia Tech where he could play behind an established starter in Haynes King. Maybe the best returning quarterback in the ACC, Haynes King, never sold stock. Held on to
that it. Would be almost funnier than the dude at Liberty. What was his name? Malik Willis. If Hayden King just ends up being real good at Georgia Tech out of nowhere, you get to laugh twice.
The Malik Willis thing that was gratifying because I had the entire pre-draft process too. Right. Whereas with Haynes King, that's going to be a little bit tougher. He's not going to be talked about in the same regard as Malik Willis was pre-draft. So that different kind of victory lap for your boy. But yeah, I mean, Haynes King, when he's healthy, he's good. He's really good. And he's also got the 2 season-ending injuries. So who knows, that could be attracted to someone like Lonergan. Or maybe Penn State would be attractive for him, considering his dad played quarterback there. His dad was on the 82 national championship that beat Georgia.
They still running the same plays.
Probably. Why would we want to stretch the field? What?
He's got a copy of their playbook in his like nursery from when he was a kid. He's like, this is 1-to-1. I can do this all day.
Yeah. Lane sits down and says, hey, here's why you don't want to go to Penn State. We just saw them in the bowl game. They ran all the same plays. Trust me. Yeah. I think Tennessee and Georgia would prefer to add a quarterback for very different reasons, though. Very, very different reasons. Tennessee's quarterback room is quietly one of the most what's the right way to say this? If there is a team in college football that could change more significantly with a starter going down than Tennessee, I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised. All of their hopes are pinned on Nico. All of them, at least in the quarterback room. Obviously, a lot of other things go into that Josh Heupel offense. It is the hardest time to recruit at the quarterback position when you've got a decorated household name that's QB1 entering year 2. That is really, really hard. We know that Nico's got 4 years of eligibility left because, remember, bowl games don't count against him. He played the 4 regular season games, the 1 bowl game. Take that for what it is. It's also about as well documented of a case that we've seen in college football for a program investing in him. Everybody's kind of just like, yeah, Tennessee gave him all that money. So the obviously the byproduct of that is, well, you know just how invested Tennessee is with Nico, and you know that they are going to be patient with him because they have given him a lot of money to be there. Heupel admitted in December, yes, having Nico Iamaleava, I don't know that he said his last name. I just wanted to say it because I was saying Nico a little bit too much. But having him is awesome. The downside is that it makes it tougher to add depth. You've got right now the true freshman Merklinger, and then 2 walk-ons. That's the Tennessee quarterback room beyond your stud, your NIL man, your go to bat against the NCAA guy. That's it. They need to get a guy in that post spring window. You just have to. And especially in the 12-team playoff era where it's not like, hey, well, if he goes down, we're going to miss the playoff anyways. No, like you can have your starter go down and then have someone that just kind of keeps this thing afloat. And that's what I think Tennessee would love to be able to do. The tricky thing, and perhaps why Tennessee couldn't really add anyone in that winter window, is that you need a veteran who knows that he's getting backup reps and he's not seeing the field unless an injury happens. Even poor play is probably not going to sideline Nico. It's going to be an injury, and that's kind of it at this stage of his career. And it's also tricky because there's this assumption that the Heupel offense is easy because it's quarterback friendly. It's quarterback friendly once you get it down, but mastering that tempo is not easy. And
we saw it last year how hard it could be with Joe Milton. That dude looked like he was in quicksand when Hendon Hooker was like having fun playing DDR back there.
And here's the thing. Adam Sparks came on the show and said, look, Joe Milton mastered the Josh Heupel offense in practice. And you can master it in practice and have an understanding for the tempo and still get out there and be limited in what you're trying to do. So it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. There's not really this feeling of how steep that learning curve is to be able to learn it. But ideally, you're adding a guy who has just at some point in his career had reps at the Power 5 level, and he's self-aware with at least a basic understanding of the offense. That's what you need if you're Josh Heupel looking at the post-spring window. I thought someone like Chandler Morris would have been a nice fit out of TCU. He played for Sonny Dykes. He played for Kendall Briles. So some familiarity with the offense. He was QB1 each of the last 2 seasons at TCU. He had the injury. He gives way to Max Duggan. The rest is history with that one. But he ends up getting hurt both years. Problem is he transferred to North Texas because he wants to be the guy. And he's got a new coaching staff there. I got one that is just oozing with intrigue. Just perfect. Would be the type of stuff that I would go back and circle. I would go back to tweets from 5 years ago and dig them up, and we would have some fun with this.
Let's hear it.
Bring Harrison Bailey back to Tennessee.
Okay,
do it. Okay. Do it because this is someone who he did spend a year with Heupel. I probably shouldn't say a year because he transferred before Halloween. It's the only year with him. Like October 27th was the date. I remember thinking it was mid-season. I didn't realize it was quite that early. Not sure if there's some bad blood there. Maybe a relationship ruined.
That date is the only thing that's kind of sticking out to me because you said, you know what? Actually, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go play PlayStation. I really do not want to be on this team.
Yeah, like I've had enough of your practices, man. Like let me just sit this one out the rest of the year.
Look, I got a math test tomorrow, brother. I'm not trying to hear what you got to say.
And look, you're Harrison Bailey. You had everybody talking about you as a true freshman. He was the cat's meow, and then Heupel comes in, and while he wasn't the one who recruited Hendon Hooker, that was a Jeremy Pruitt decision. He did bring in Joe Milton as a post-spring transfer. So there was already 2 guys who were more set up to start and run that offense compared to him. So who knows what that relationship looks like. But Harrison Bailey's entering year 5. He spent some time developing under Heupel, some time, not a full year. And Jeff Brom, also a known developer of offense, known developer of quarterbacks, because he was at Louisville most recently as a preferred walk-on. That's what I'm rooting for. Will it happen? Probably not, because I can't have nice things, but I would love it if Harrison Bailey went back to Tennessee.
Harrison Bailey is a hell of a pull because, his first year he was 1-2 as a starter, started 3 games, played 6. His total career, he's played in 14 games, started 3. So he has not started a game since then. The height of his career was actually at Tennessee. So, yeah, it's one of those, like, hey, you bumped around a little bit. How'd that go for you, honestly? Like, it's not like you found these green pastures. So I actually love that.
Yeah, but there's an asterisk if you're a Jeremy Pruitt quarterback. There just is. It's Will Muschamp light. It is. It's like, hey, look at the limiting factors. Again, if it'd be different if he went off and had some legitimate success elsewhere, but and the fact that he was a preferred walk-on at Louisville last year probably wasn't exactly the best for his market value. But again, you're trying to bring in somebody not to be the starter, but somebody who kind of understands the situation. Maybe he's been humbled over the years. Lord knows Tennessee fans would have no problem just retweeting all of his practice throws. That's what we need to happen. If we get Harrison Bailey back to Tennessee, and if those bridges have not been burned, I want Tennessee fans to treat this like it's 2019 all over again, or early 2020 before the pandemic. Retweet every video of him throwing a football, even if it's on the sideline. Just, oh my God, Harrison Bailey's spinning it. Spinning it. That's what we need to happen. But will it? Probably not. Probably not.
That would actually be an incredible troll for all of Tennessee to do that after the Joe Milton thing, where it's like, here's the next guy we're going to sell you. And it was like, you can't keep getting away with this. And they're like, yes, we can. That would be great. Yeah, I love the thought of like, this is like, you asked me some interesting questions out here, thinking about who is the most valuable quarterback, not in terms of how good they are, but in terms of what's sitting behind them. A guy that comes to my mind, your boy Noah Fafita. I think that if he gets hurt, Arizona's in a different place. But in a, money Power 5 type situation, I think you're making a great point at Tennessee, which is that, when you have a guy like Nico Iamaleava. There we go. If you have,
you crushed both of those, by the way, so you're good.
There we go. Redemption, right? So point being, if you have Nico, he's a guy that we saw that smooth motion out of him. We talked about this a little bit with some of the mobile quarterbacks in the SEC going back a couple of years. If you don't have that backup that you feel like can at least keep you afloat, you start to take that stuff out of your playbook. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And that limits what Nico can do, because we saw Hendon Hooker be effective in that offense. He was scrambling for first downs, making them guard the run, and then dumping it over their heads. So to your point, I think that's actually a really big roster need, because if you get another guy in there and say, hey, like when you make it obvious, like the way that LSU did with Jaden Daniels for a minute, where it was like, we can't run this guy. He's hurt. We don't trust Nussmeier. The defense starts to pin their ears back and get after you because they know that you can't kind of trick them and you can't call their bluff, basically. So I actually would say that's a pretty big roster need. And to your point, you could even reach down into, different division, FCS type of thing, and say, here's a guy who, has been starting for a couple of years. Let's get him on Tennessee. Let's get him the Josh Heupel blessing. He has another year or so. We can get Josh Heupel to write a nice little review for him. Say, hey, go start at UNLV or whatever. And like that way it can be mutually beneficial versus getting some guy in there that's like, all right, Nico, I'm coming for your job,
Yes, exactly.
Swan at LSU is a great example.
Right, yeah. And Swan's in a little bit of a different spot because of the remaining eligibility, but I would almost sell it as not an internship of sorts, but you've seen situations like this in the past where, look, I think there is something to be said for dipping into an FCS program and saying to someone, look, I'm not telling you you're not going to be an NFL quarterback one day, but you're QB1 at Penn, okay? If you come on board and learn from this staff, we can get you set up. You want to be a coach at the next level, you want to have connections, be part of the Tennessee organization, and have people that can take care of you at a very well-connected university. Be our QB2, be our backup, help our young quarterback, our young promising quarterback, and just give us that insurance policy. Give us that insurance policy so that we can fully run our offense the way that we like to, and we don't have to hold our breath every single time he rolls out. Because you're right, that's huge, and it so limits what you can do from an offensive standpoint if you're thinking to yourself this entire time, crap, it's 3rd and 1. We can't run a QB sneak with this guy. We got to bring in somebody else to be able to do this, or we got to use a play that isn't necessarily what we would like to be able to run. And it's a key point. And Tennessee, I guarantee you, Josh Heupel is going to look far and wide to be able to find somebody that can check that box for him, because it can be huge. And it's not to say it's going to save Tennessee's playoff chances or something like that, but you just never know in a situation like this with more possibilities available in the 12-team playoff. All right, Georgia's situation. It's not quite as tricky. It's not. Carson Beck, people aren't talking about this. Carson Beck still technically has 2 more years of eligibility, but he's entering year 5 in Athens. The assumption is that he is gone after 2024. Not a guarantee, but I would bet a lot of money that this will be his last year at Georgia. Behind him, you no longer have Brock Vandagriff because he's off to Kentucky. You don't have Dylan Raiola because
the Brocks have abandoned you. They've flown south for the winter.
They have.
There's no Brocks in town.
Just bring in a guy off the street named Brock. Just like, hey, we've done really well when we've had multiple Brocks on our roster the last 3 years. I don't care. Can you kick? Can you pretend to kick? How are you at holding Brock? Random guy on campus. Yeah, Kirby just came up to me one day because my name was Brock. It was really weird. But yeah, you understand your quarterback situation is different than what it was. You don't have this, incoming true freshman a Dylan Raiola. We know that Georgia doesn't have him because of Kirk Herbstreit. Just kidding. Half kidding.
That was it. Yeah. But you make a good point though, which is that a lot of the coaches are now having kind of the leverage put on them, which is that you don't want to be that coach that has the bad taste in recruits' mouth over transfers, like kind of the way that Raiola's recruitment was, where it's like you don't want that stuff getting out into the media. So that goes back to your point about playing it kind of straight and not, So yeah, that situation does bear repeating in this case because it's all a game,
Because if he was there, if he was on campus, I think Kirby would say, no, we're fine. Look what he did 2017, where he had Jacob Eason coming back, and Jake Fromm was his true backup that year as a true freshman. Now, not everybody is Jake Fromm, Jake Fromm has been 18 years old since he was 5 years old. So that's a little bit different. But there is still a comfort level that Kirby clearly has in a situation like that. And I think he would have had it for Dylan Raiola, who is looking like he is going to be the starter at Nebraska as a true freshman. So you're looking at this and going, well, backup situation is year 3 Gunnar Stockton and true freshman Ryan Puglisi. The question that Kirby must answer post-spring is, does he feel like Gunnar Stockton's development is enough to where he could keep Georgia's title hopes alive if Carson Beck goes down? If he feels like he's progressing, fine. You ride it out. You're okay with that. This guy has had multiple years in your offense. Even though the reps are very limited, you still feel like, all right, this guy can come in a pinch. We believe in him. We feel like he's been making those progressions. Okay, you do nothing. That's an option. But you got to remember, you're not determining whether or not you think this guy is going to be the quarterback of the future. This is about getting someone who can step in and run an offense. That's it. That's what you want to be able to see. Someone like Drew Pine would have made a lot of sense, but he's off to Mizzou after the Sam Horn, Tommy John injury, which is just absolutely brutal. A guy that Mizzou fans were so excited about, and just one of those guys that just can't seem to be able to kind of get right. But luckily they do have Brady Cook right now. Georgia can be selective here, and I think very likely will be selective. The right situation would have to come along. You're not getting an established starter. More likely is that Georgia would go after an upperclassman who lost their job, like a Jaden DeLora, who had off the field circumstances that, let's just say, impacted his ability to stay at Texas State after transferring from Arizona, and now he is off to the NFL. I don't know what that all is going to look like, but someone like that in a nutshell. Guy who lost his job, guy who is saying, yeah, I'd be the backup if I stayed. I'll be the backup if I go elsewhere, but at least I can kind of start over and put myself in a new situation. Alternatively, someone like MJ Morris, who left for Maryland after he was Devin Leary's replacement at NC State. If he loses the battle to one of those two guys that dominated Auburn in the bowl game, maybe he could decide, maybe I'd like to go to a place like Georgia and have a better path. But this depends on Kirby's evaluation of what Gunnar Stockton looks like post-spring. Georgia fans are probably going to tell you that this guy's great, but if he gets out there in the spring game and it looks like he is just not ready at all whatsoever, maybe that could push him in that direction. We know that Kirby has never been shy about adding a quarterback in the transfer portal. Hasn't had to do it, and that's the good thing. But circumstances can change in a hurry. Any thoughts on that if you're Georgia, if you're Kirby right now?
Yeah, I think that Kirby has kind of shown that he wants that older guy. He wants the upperclassman. I love how you kind of hit on that. He's a guy that pretty much historically has almost never been swayed by like the talented freshman. Like Brock Bowers got on the field because he played like a dog and blocked hard. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he had great receiving skills, but if it was just that, a la Eric Gilbert, he would not have gotten on the field. It was about, okay, you did things the right way. I'm kind of editorializing here, but it feels like a practice is the right way, handles yourself the right way. Like, it's not, oh, this guy is a 5-star, I trust him now, like because of his talent and his recruiting ratings. And that's almost the one position that, yeah, you can say that about every other position too at Georgia as far as earned or keep, but in terms of quarterback, it seems like there's an additional layer, which is that you're going to have the keys to this offense. And I got to know that you won't be irresponsible. You know what I'm saying? You won't go out there and commit turnovers. You won't go off script. Like, I want to get around you for a while. And even if you haven't been here for a while, you've been somewhere for a while, then go talk to your coach and say, hey, we got this guy. What do you think? You know, because I don't think Kirby builds quarterback opinions over the course of an offseason. I think he is a guy who has a file that all kind of points one way. And to earn that trust from Kirby, you have to really put in a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So yeah, I think that you're right, an upperclassman guy, like some of the guys that you mentioned, that you can go back and watch the tape. You can say, here's what this guy does in this situation. I feel good enough to just let it go,
Trust, that's the biggest thing.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing with Kirby. And Georgia's in a very advantageous spot with Carson Beck as the starter. So if that means rolling the dice on a veteran, I would not rule that out. And if Kirby decides that that's what he needs to do, he's going to get it done. It's as simple as that.
And that's not to say that's right or wrong, too. Like we talked about Lane Kiffin with Jalen Hurts, letting him live through the fumble as a freshman and everything. That just does not seem to be Kirby's bag. Just different types of folks. Nothing right, nothing wrong. But he's not the guy that's like, let's get the freshman out there, let him make some mistakes. It's like, let's get those mistakes figured out in practice.
It is interesting that we're no longer having these conversations about Kirby at the quarterback position. The last 3 years have significantly changed that, and how we talk about, oh man, I wonder if this guy is going to end up being, which guy's going to leave here, which it's kind of like, no, they've got one of the best 2 or 3 returning quarterbacks in all of college football, and they've got a backup that they've developed now who's entering year 3, and it actually makes a little bit more sense than a lot of these places that are just scrambling and feel like they're kind of all over the place. Georgia, even though you lose a Brock Vandagriff, is still in a position that is, I think, a whole lot of teams in college football would easily trade places with.
Yeah.
One of those teams I would trade places with Georgia is Auburn will. I'm gonna repeat myself with this. I'm super surprised that Peyton Thorne has the inside track to be the starter in 2024. As of right now, I did not think that if he had the season that he did, that he would still be in this spot. I thought Auburn would just be in a different spot at this time last year. Maybe Robbie Ashford would show some promise, but that didn't happen. He's off to South Carolina. As of right now, Hugh Freeze's year 2 offense will be on Peyton Thorne, Holden Geriner. Yes, it's Turner with a G, Geriner. And bowl game hero, Hank Brown.
Hank.
Yeah, Hank. And he's got, incoming guys as well. But by bowl game hero, I mean the guy who steps onto the field and looked competent in the midst of a blowout loss.
He was on the field. Yeah.
It's a good thing to be able to do. That doesn't necessarily make you the quarterback of the future. It just means that you were the quarterback of that day. And I would be surprised if Hugh Freeze put all of his eggs in that basket. My advice to Auburn, if the SEC rule doesn't change, tamper, and then tamper some more. That's what I would do. Big time. Yeah. I thought they were going to tamper to get Caden Salter. I thought that was going to be the next move. I know that he withdrew his name from the portal. A lot of those dots were connected, obviously, because Freeze coached him at Liberty. We know the need for a quarterback on the Plains. Whenever a quarterback feels like he's going to transfer to Auburn and then he just doesn't, I'm just going to assume it's academic related. The Grayson McCall thing. There were rumors that there was that with Caden Salter as well. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I know.
Poor Grayson McCall, man. This guy went on like 2 world tours just to have everyone be like, this guy don't got the grades.
That's pretty rough. It's pretty rough.
We don't talk about that enough. How it was like every team was like, "How Grayson?" He had to go out there and be like, "Guys, I didn't get it."
But I think it's something too with the majors that they have at Auburn, and like some credits transfer and some don't. So I don't even know if it's as simple as what's my GPA. Like I think there are other things that go into it. I wish I knew some of the more back end stuff on that, but I honestly just do not and don't pretend to. But it hasn't worked out. It hasn't worked out. What about? Here's one that if this fan base is listening, they're going to want to throw things at whatever device they're listening on. Jacob Zeno from UAB. One of the best group of 5 quarterbacks coming back. He's coming back for year 6, Trent Dilfer's program. Yeah. Started off his career at Baylor. Then he spent the last 2 at UAB. Watched him in that game against Georgia last year and thought, this kid ain't bad. This kid's pretty good. He's pretty darn good. That would be the guy that I would absolutely tamper to go get. He went on with my guy Adam Brenneman a few months ago and said that he turned down $800,000 in the portal for a year to stay at UAB. So pretty transparent about it. For me, if I'm Auburn, I listen to that and say, all right, we offer him $1 million. That's what we do.
He said no to $800K, but he didn't say he would say no to
7 figures, buddy. Let's get it.
This is a real question. This is not a joke. If you're Jacob Zeno, what makes you want to trust Hugh Freeze over Trent Dilfer at this exact point?
It depends on a few things, right? Do you think your surroundings at UAB have gotten worse? I have not dug into the receiver depth chart, have not looked at how many returning offensive linemen UAB's got coming back this season.
Yeah.
If you feel like your potential isn't being maximized, even after a really good year, and you feel like you would get more NFL notice if you went to a place like Auburn, then it's a possibility. And if you could be
Yeah.
paid $1 million to do so, that obviously is a little bit different. I'm not saying that he's going to do that. If I'm betting, I'm saying he's probably not going to do that. If he's being that outward about turning down $800K,
Yeah, when you say yes, it's the classic Cam Newton. It's like Mississippi State offered us $350K. Wait, but you ended up at Auburn. How much? Hold on.
Yes. When we have these numbers, usually it's like, the Drake May thing where it's like, Mac Brown was saying you got $5 million or whatever to get to go somewhere for a year and he ends up staying. It's like you can't then turn around and be the school that gets Drake May because then everybody knows that he's getting more than $5 million.
Yeah.
But
it's just a great fit for me and my family, man. I don't know. I just love the coaches down there, the program they're building.
Look, he probably does, and I'm not trying to be, the snobby. You have to go to a power program, a core 4 program, as we would call them, to be able to get eyeballs on you. But you do think about stuff like that. You do, and you just kind of never know. If I'm Auburn, I'm making moves like that. That's how I'm trying to approach this. I say that more so, not in actuality, like they're going to be able to execute that plan, but more so, that's the type of move that you would hope that you can make that changes the trajectory of your offense in year 2. Because again, it's not so much that I think Hugh Freeze is fighting for his job in year 2 just because his predecessor didn't make it to the end of year 2. But you're trying to do the thing that Billy Napier couldn't do last year. That is get people. Good question. Really good question. You don't want to be on everybody's hot seat going into year 3. That's what you're trying to avoid. And you could say that probably about any year in the SEC for a specific head coach. But that is the thing that Hugh Freeze would just be so frustrated with if he looked at his quarterback room, had opportunities to upgrade, or didn't necessarily he didn't leave every stone unturned. Did I phrase that correctly? I think I did. No stone left unturned when it comes to the quarterback position on the Plains. That's got to be the mindset going forward, despite the perhaps learning curve that awaits for a post-spring quarterback transfer in Hugh Freeze's offense. I would still want to be super, super aggressive knowing what the other side looks like.
Yeah, and I think Alabama is the most interesting thing happening in the SEC. Let's not kid ourselves, but right up in that kind of, that's the S tier. There's the A tier, right? Which is that, we've seen Hugh Freeze beat Nick Saban twice in a row. We've seen what Hugh Freeze is pretty, like Lane Kiffin tweets out this graphic the other day of Ole Miss alums in the Pro Bowl, and it's all Hugh Freeze players. Every single one is a Hugh Freeze player. They're all on offense, all right? So, that we know what Hugh Freeze is capable of. We did not see a lick of it last year. We did not see, to be honest, it is unfair to Hugh Freeze to say that he did even part of what he was hired to do last year. So that's the thing, is that when are we going to stop kind of doing, this thing? I'm certainly not going to all shucks Hugh Freeze. I'm not going to do the thing of, I used to be a great play caller in that set. Like, he has his own reasons why he's been at where he's been at. But even at Liberty, he had a great offense. He had Malik Willis. He had these pretty solid programs in general that were punching up above their weight class. And Auburn has punched at or below its weight class if you take out the Georgia game, which, again, we've seen Auburn kind of do that to everybody. Like the Alabama game, the Georgia game, that's just Auburn. Harsin had games like that. So I think that was the control. We saw Harsin almost beat Alabama on the Plains. It was like, anyone can do this here, actually. So point being, I'm not going to give him credit for that, but, we're a year away, and, we got the 5-star receivers, we got all this stuff coming in. We're a year away from one renaissance of, oh my gosh, Hugh Freeze has it again, but we just haven't seen it. Like, there's just nothing to say. We just kicked the can down and that's why I was so against Peyton Thorne, because I just don't think he's that guy. Maybe he will be, but it's like once we might look back in a year and there's a line of quarterbacks out Hugh Freeze's door the way there have been at, Tennessee or other places with Ohio State with these great offensive minds. They're just a quarterback factory. But right now, it's not where we're at.
My thing is, look, I understand that everybody always feels like, if I just get to the right situation, I'll become this guy.
Yep.
I want to say Peyton Thorne has been benched mid-game for performance something like 5 times in his career.
Yeah.
That includes 3 at Michigan State. But that's a lot of times in which your head coach has said, you just don't have it. And if that's your floor, because I think we're talking about somebody that's probably making turnovers, the offense isn't going anywhere, it's 3 and outs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just don't ever see what the upside is and how it makes it worth it, because maybe he's going to have that one-off game for you. Maybe he's going to put that together, but that downside is just too low for me to feel like I can build an offense around that. And I don't want to do that for a second consecutive year if I'm Hugh Freeze. And I'll be surprised if that's who he ends up sticking with for the entirety of 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about a guy that's really interesting that made headlines a little bit recently. Devin Brown at Ohio State. He's the last guy that I want to talk to you about because it'll lead right into our conversation with Bobby Carpenter as well. We've got Will Howard coming in from Kansas State. Aaron Noland, all-name team guy. He's coming in to Columbus as a true freshman. Another true freshman, Julian Sayin, leaves Alabama, goes to Ohio State. Devin Brown is trying to fend off all of that. That's his goal. The bowl game was not great. We know that. He ends up getting hurt in that game. Wasn't really particularly good before that. That can kind of get overlooked. But this sport is cruel sometimes. It just is. That's sometimes all you get before a coach actually makes a decision. We can talk about, he's got the right approach at practice. So I love the way that he's coming to the weight room. He's a leader of the guys. You should see him in the film room. All these things. These coaches watch what they actually do between the lines. Okay? They just do.
Well, the smart ones.
One would think. Yes, one would think.
I've seen some guys out there who I'm like, I don't know what this coach sees. Anyway.
Like, did he have this guy at like a YMCA basketball game when he was in 4th grade? Like, what is he seeing in him? I just don't get it.
Got a great handshake.
Yeah, just nice, firm handshake. You know what? I'll say this. I'll go on record. If your handshake breaks my hand, that says more about you than it does me. You're doing too much. You're compensating.
Good point.
I don't like that. I've met some of those people in my past, and I always come away being like, I think you're doing too much. Just take it easy, guy. Like, you don't have to be like that. Anyways, what are we talking about? Oh, yeah, Devin Brown. Devin Brown turned heads with this quote that came out like a week ago. This is via Marcus Hartman. He said, I think people are cowards. I think people have this thought in their own heads that I'm going to leave Ohio State, that I'm a quitter. That's never been me. These people live in their mom's basement and don't know you know what. They don't know who I am. They don't know who I've been, and that's always who I've been. I don't live in my mom's basement. I live in this house. You can see if you're watching on YouTube. Look that up. This is not my mom's basement. I can promise you that.
Hey, you call me what you want, but you can't call me broke, Devin.
Football on my taxes, still there. All right.
Yeah.
I do have a house. I am old enough to remember when a certain Tathan Martell said something pretty similar when Justin Fields was coming to Ohio State. Now, Will Howard is not Justin Fields, okay? Don't get it twisted. I get it from that standpoint. And I get Devin Brown's fighting for his life right now.
Right.
Okay. This is his time. It's not fall camp. It is right now. You're trying to embrace this me against the world type approach. Yeah, he's a quarterback. He's going to try and win the support of his locker room. He has a lot of the support in that locker room as well. I get all of those things. But you're trying to rewrite your story. You've seen what your coach just brought in a lot of talent. And if we're doing unofficial rankings of quarterbacks that Ohio State fans would most want to see, he ain't top 2, okay? He's probably not, if we're being honest. That doesn't mean that he's going to be a bad quarterback. Maybe he's going to win the job. Maybe he's going to beat out Will Howard, and it's going to be the surprise of the offseason, and he's going to be this stud guy and the next great quarterback at Ohio State. That's possible. But as someone who doesn't live in his mom's basement, I can still look at this situation and see, well, if you think you're the odd man out and you feel like that post-spring, you're going to want to find somewhere else to be able to play. And I think that could be a possibility. Maybe a Utah native goes back to Utah to back up Cam Rising entering year 8, whatever this is for him. That guy is 35.
Cam setting. He's no longer rising. Still just risen. It's out to the next cycle. Cam daylight savings time. Anyway, no, I get it. Like, I see the pain in that quote, to be honest. Like, and I really do. I do think the living in your mom's basement thing is a little bit of a played out, trope. if anything, it's class warfare at its best, right? Like, oh, you're living in your mom's basement. It's like, yeah, maybe the job market hasn't given me the opportunities to be able to do what I love for a living. Sorry, buddy. But like it's just.
Have you seen my mom's basement? My mom's basement's sick. Like she's
got. That's the other side of this. Like, what if I did want to go live with my mom? I don't necessarily, but if I like, what's wrong with that? So, point being, like, yeah, you could always see the mom's basement comments start to come out when somebody's real hurt, especially at this point. Like when I first heard that in 2005, it was a zinger. It was like, oh, this guy's living in his mom's basement. But when you bring that up now, it's like, hey, bro, like we know what the score is, and it's not a little bit of a. Okay, let me say two things about this. Ohio State, first off, kind of funny to be playing for Ryan Day, who just opened up, through the GDP of a third world country into the transfer portal to get more help after they lost to Michigan for the third time. But we're the cowards. Okay, second, this is not some Joe Burrow getting in there and starting to fight with people because he wants to win so bad. This is like you guys are mean to me and you don't believe me. It's like, go out there and fight. Take that energy that you're putting into being mad at the press and go win that job, or don't make it into me versus the press or me versus the haters. It's like, brother, again, you're probably third place right now. That's a reality. You need to go change that, or don't and leave, but don't make it about, like, you backed yourself into a corner because now if you do the Damian Lillard, like what he did, I'm never leaving Portland. I'm never leaving. They specifically demanded a trade to Miami. Well, where you did that, it's your PR is done. The brand deals are done because your whole image was, I'm the guy who didn't want to quit the grind,
And sometimes it's okay to quit.
To make a business decision. We keep talking about it. It works for you, bro. Joe Burrow's not a loser because he left Ohio State.
Seriously, think of how many quarterbacks are like, you're not a quitter if you transfer. That's the dumbest, most outplayed thing ever. If you're still coming up with that as like your narrative for why a guy just isn't right. There are situations in which there could be a quarterback who quits. Sure, 100%. And I get it from this standpoint. You want to show.
The guy on October 27th, let's just go ahead and say he quit.
Harrison Bailey, confirmed quitter of year one of the Josh Heupel era. Yes, I think you could say that. That's fair. I'll get on board with that. But not every situation necessarily means that. And I understand he's doing this more so just to be able to hype himself up. But if he enters the portal, promises to change his number, not do the Sammy Baugh thing anymore, not number 33. Look, the market could be significant, and I don't know what those conversations are going to be like for him. I don't know if he would have immediate Power 5 starting ability. Probably not, but you just never know with these things. And he would be really intriguing, and it's that much more intriguing now that he came out and said that. And so he'd be one of those guys where if he does hit the portal, my guy Fred at Old Takes Exposed, he would have that one ready to go. Ready to go. Yep. I am now rooting for that. I'm not rooting against the kid. Trust me, I'm not doing that. But I am rooting for that to come out because in the content business, that would just be pure gold.
And that's what happens when you viscerally have an old school mentality. It's like adapt or die. Like no one's giving you points. It's like the Arch Manning thing. It's like, well, my family said I couldn't take NIL money until I became a real player. Well, that's just making everyone put bulletin board material to laugh at you. Just to be honest with you, bro. You like, not to say anyone's current decision, but it's like when you go, we're old school. We don't take money here. It's like, yeah, because you guys have generational wealth, dude. Probably. Yeah. Like so it's like you're not coming across as this cool gamer like Drew Brees type guy. You're probably giving a little bit more Russell Wilson. If you catch my drift there.
Yeah, your family is the ultimate football family. I respect your opinion. I will not chastise you for doing that, but let's not pretend like all circumstances are equal. Right. Arch Manning not entering the portal, by the way. Mm-hmm. I don't know who needs to hear this. The crowd that guaranteed that he would transfer if he was not starting by the time he was a year 2 guy, but Arch Manning not going anywhere, staying at Texas. If he hits the portal at any point in his career, gosh, the things that will be floated out there about his NIL value and all those different things, regardless of how many games he plays, would be incredible to hear. But no, that is one headline that, look, I am not sitting here bracing for. He will be QB2 at Texas. Probably best for all parties involved. Get to learn another year behind Quinn Ewers in that offense with Steve Sarkisian, and year 3 probably have that opportunity. So,
yeah, and that's why I'm blessed because I get to talk to you, like I said, but it's like, I really listen to the noise. I listen to you, a little bit of Pate, some of the SEC network guys, but like the concept of getting on an Instagram and having 20 comments in a row, like, well, Arch is going to transfer. It's like, you guys got to go listen to, Cotter, the way he laid out when Arch first got there of how this timeline could and should go. Nothing has changed. This is all part of the plan for Texas and for Arch,
Yeah, if this had been a Justin Fields situation where he decided after 1 year there and he just didn't feel like he was used properly, all right, maybe that changes the conversation. But no, this nothing so far suggested that this is anything like that. And yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
don't expect him to be going anywhere anytime soon. Okay, any other thoughts on the post spring market for quarterbacks in the portal before we kick to Bobby Carpenter?
Yeah, I think even this rule itself is kind of antiquated. It goes to show where the real power is here, because this is an unwritten rule, right? This is not. I mean, it's a written rule, but it's the reason why no
It's
one
written.
has gone right.
Yeah.
It's written, but no one has gone Ed O'Bannon. Like, look at the Dartmouth basketball players are unionizing right now. Okay, like if an SEC coach came out there. And we all know it would be Beamer, and said, "Hey, this is unconstitutional. We can't do this. This is illegal." It would probably get overruled just based on how everything's going. But no one's wanting to do that because
No, I don't think that's the case. I think there's just not majority. They don't have the numbers to be able to change it.
yeah, no, but you see what I'm saying, which is that they are happy with it. The powers that be are happy with it in the SEC, so therefore it's staying. It's like no one is raising up and saying this is unfair the way they are with everything else, because it benefits the coaches, it benefits players that are at their current destination. So this is the last little modicum of power that they have, right? So there's no one out there saying we got to change. Because yeah, if there was some super unhappy, if Tate Martell was in the SEC right now and trying to transfer, he probably would go straight to Congress and say, and I don't know if it would hold up, but no one's even talking about that. So to that point, it just goes to show the coaches in the SEC still have a little bit of that sway. They still want to keep what they have. So I wouldn't get too excited about that rule changing either, just because I feel like we would start to hear the smoke the way we hear like the Ross Dellinger tweet that says the most insane thing you ever heard. Those feels like those come out about every 3 months now, where it's like, well, now they're going to have like a 3v3 basketball tournament to determine the seeding of the new playoff. And you're like, when did we start talking about this? We haven't seen that in this conversation yet. So I would just say, like, don't sit there and go, well, once we get this rule changed, we could just go get this guy from Alabama. Like there are some things to consider there, but point being, it's not close to happening as we sit here, right?
We're going to sit the conference champions in a room and make them play a game of heads up, 7-up. And the winner of that game gets to host multiple playoff games. That's the way. If that came out, wouldn't be a surprise at this point. Really wouldn't. But I do hope it gets changed. I don't know if that'll happen this year. Okay, let's kick it to Bobby Carpenter. I've said many, many times, Ohio State, ultimate agent for chaos. And it's just a team that could have an impact on so many in college football. So great to be able to get some insight from someone who understands that program inside and out. Here is Bobby Carpenter. I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Ohio State great and host of The Morning Juice and Off Campus. It is Bobby Carpenter. Bobby, you've had about, what is it, like 10 weeks now to recover from the Cotton Bowl. Have you fully recovered from that, or was Ohio State losing to Mizzou in that fashion perhaps just not as painful because non-playoff New Year's Six games for Ohio State is just really doesn't shape a whole lot of perception? Like what's been the recovery from that?
Well, I think initially it was very painful, and people were very upset about it, and nobody cares about the game. Like, oh, guys don't want to play in it, this and that, and then people only care when it looks bad and you get beat probably in a certain way, and then all of a sudden the game matters, even though it didn't matter before that. And so I do think that the way that it went down did impact some people and impacted a lot of folks, and I think that honestly it probably jump started some things to get going internally at Ohio State, and a little bit maybe on the NIL front, and then to maybe take a hard, long look at stuff. And when you're starting quarterbacks not out there, you're juggled your offensive line, and so there was a lot of obviously negativity surrounding that, and people were really upset. And then all of a sudden, that kind of spearheaded some changes on the coaching staff. You bring in Chip Kelly. I think that's obviously a huge addition. Matt Greery comes in to, it was with Jim Knowles earlier, comes back from Indiana to help with the coaching the safeties now. And then the addition of James Laurinaitis, which took a little bit of time, but ultimately he gets promoted from a graduate assistant to a full-time coach, even though he was running the linebackers last year. Like those things, like that felt really good. And so on the players' side, and then going, into the transfer portal, Kyle McCord leaves. You bring in Will Howard, and, Kyle McCord, like everybody, it's a kind of a complex relationship here because I don't think he's a bad player. He obviously isn't, CJ Stroud or Justin Fields. And like, that's okay too. Like you can be just a good college quarterback as far as maybe, personality wise, there's a lot of pressure on him, and I don't know if he really responded all that well to it. But you bring in a guy who's won a Big 12 championship, who's been in that situation before. He feels good about it. You get, this manna from heaven with Quinshon Judkins coming in. And I don't think they're even really looking for a running back. And all of a sudden you have a guy who led the SEC for a couple of years, like, hey, I'd like to come up there. Davidson Igbenusson, like, I like him. And he says it's a good place to play. And I don't want to get into maybe why he left. You can bring someone on from Ole Miss, Connor, and talk about that. But you throw him in, then all of a sudden, like the Saban thing happens, and you get Caleb Downs, who's maybe the best safety in the country, who has a couple seasons left. You get Seth McLaughlin, the center, who everybody bemoans the national championship game, but
Yeah.
you don't start 26 games at Alabama at center and not be a good player. And sometimes that's just a bad fit and things got a little sideways. And then you get Julian Sayin coming in with the Bill O'Brien hiring, and then you move that to then Chip Kelly, who people have differing opinions on both of those guys. But I think it really works. Is Ryan's former head coach. He coached under him. He played under him. The guy's obviously been successful in college and in the NFL to a degree. He's been a head coach. He has all those ties. And so he's a guy you can trust if you're Ryan. You can let him be the offensive coordinator. And that's really all Chip wants to do. You don't have to worry about a guy looking for other jobs, knowing that, hey, man, being a head coach at a place that doesn't maybe have the resources that align with expectations, that job stinks because it's almost impossible to get it done. And then the final piece of this, Connors, I know I got a little long-winded, is you had a lot of guys who could have left. And outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., which I think everybody understood that he was going to be on his way out, everybody else really came back of note. Mike Hall left, and there was some other stuff going on with him. I think outside of just him probably more needing to go. But a lot of the guys come back, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And so you had this confluence of events over maybe like the following 4 to 5 weeks where everybody was really upset. And then all of a sudden, like, man, things look really good. Can't wait to see him in spring ball. This is about as good a situation as we could possibly have now.
One thing I do like about Ryan Day and really appreciate is that he understands that at Ohio State, that anything short of getting to a playoff, winning a national championship, like you can make those adjustments. And bringing in Jim Knowles when he did, I applauded that move because a lot of others in his situation with the timing of that would have said, no, let's dig our heels in even more. And so this 10-week period that has all happened right after losing the way that they did to Mizzou, it's fascinating because everything has changed. And now it feels like Ohio State is this ultimate agent of chaos. That's what I've been calling them because I think they're the only non-SEC team that can win a national championship this year. Like I truly do. Like, and look, that can depend on a lot of different things, but how unique does this offseason feel knowing that this is as close to any team that I've seen in recent memory where it truly feels like title or bust for a head coach. One thing to be title or bust for a specific team, for a specific program, but for a head coach in the way that we talk about Ryan Day.
Everybody always looks at this where, is it a failure if you don't win a national championship? And I would say that's definitely the expectation. And it's probably kind of the expectation most years, realistically, at Ohio State, like it is, at probably a handful of other schools. And Ryan would always say, at Ohio State, your job is to win all your games, especially the last regular season one, and win a national championship. And that's kind of what people expect. So he's leaned into that. He understands that. I wouldn't say it's a failure for this team, but I think it would be kind of unfulfilled expectations if they're not at least playing for it. Now, understand this is a new era in the CFP where it's a little bit more March Madness-esque, where it's not just winning 2 games. You got to win a handful now. And so, as you know, the more time you add in more games, injuries, maybe some weather play. There's just a lot of a bad call here or there. There's things that can impact it. So I don't necessarily want to go all the way Tyler bust, but this team, Ryan knows it. The coaches have seen it. The players, they've been around it. They know how much talent's here. They know that they have the ability to win it. And you look at the odds makers and everything else, and it's just a function of, hey, go out here. Now you have to perform. And so I think guys enjoy that pressure because you'd rather have that pressure with the talent than without. And so they've got all that before them. But I think there is a real feel where like there shouldn't be anybody in the country that's markedly better than you. And so it's going out there and winning those games.
I know you're a Ryan Day believer, but if the Ohio State job were to open up, let's just say hypothetically, and that hay is in the barn, which look, that's not a foregone conclusion. Even with Ross Bjork stepping in, I think he very much wants to make his first splashy football coach hire. I think that's something that he would like to be able to do at a place like Ohio State. But if it opens up, I think you can make a case that it's the best job in the sport. I'm usually not that who's like, oh, is this job better than this job? Because timing impacts so much of that. But man, for the last 20, 25 years, you could really make that good argument. Have you even allowed yourself to go there and think about potential candidates? Because I think that list would be far and wide and it would be incredible.
I think it would. I mean, like you said, I'm a little biased. I think it probably is the best job in college football. There are some drawbacks to it. I mean, there's the pressure element of it. And I know Cincinnati, I guess, just, they're joining the Big 12. Now they're, a Power 4 school or whatever it is. But for the longest time, it was the biggest football-centric state that had one elite program or one Power 5 program in state. And you look at, Bama and with Alabama with Auburn and Alabama. You look at Georgia Tech's in there. And, Georgia Tech isn't what Alabama or Georgia was, but I mean, they've won a national title within the last 30 some years. They've been playing they played at a high level points. Michigan has Michigan State. Florida's got obviously a number of schools, that play football at a high level. So it has the the seventh largest population by state, and it's 11 million people. And I always joke and say 10 million of them care about Ohio State football. With that comes a lot of resources, but also comes a lot of pressure. And so you've got to be able to win and have success. So I do believe that it's one of the best jobs and probably the best job in college football, in my opinion. I think Ryan understands and appreciates for what it is. Ross Bjork coming in, I'm pretty excited. I think Ryan's excited too, for him to be there because I think he gets it, and him being a lot of places. I mean, hopefully he doesn't want to make a splash hire prematurely. It's great if you can be an AD and have your coach win national championships, and maybe you get the credit, maybe you don't on that tangentially, even though he wasn't, quote, your hire when you got there. But I've been excited with Ross being here and everything that he's kind of brought to the table. He's going to have to hire a men's basketball coach, so that's going to be part of it. So we'll have that. Is literally his first order of business of how that's going to ultimately look. But he understands the way a lot of things work, and so I think Ryan's excited for that. I'm excited, but yeah, there's a number of candidates I think you would have. There would be a lot of people that I think would like the job, and it's wholly unique. And as you mentioned, over 25 years, and you could even make the argument back to all the way to 19, whatever it was, 51. I think when Woody got the job, like every coach that's coached here on a permanent basis is in the College Football Hall of Fame, for what they've been able to do. And John Cooper got close to winning national titles, came up a little short. Earl Bruce played for some, didn't win them. Tress won one, or played for a couple. Urban in the same spot. Like they really haven't missed on a hire since World War II, and that's something that's special, and that's a tribute to the ADs. So like, while Ross, like you want to make that splash hire, you also don't want to be the first guy that hires someone that maybe flames out in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. LSU is the only other place I can think of like that, where you talk about that in-state dynamic and it's like, it's the program.
That's very true.
Yeah. And it elevates the job so much. You're exactly right. Like I do think there's something to be said for that.
It's fantastic. And one of the things with LSU, like Saban kind of woke it up. I mean, there was a period there where you kind of look around and for about 15, 20 years, like they just weren't as good as they probably should have been. Not that they were ever like bad, but you see since that time, the last 3 coaches have all won national championships. Ohio State's the only other school that has the ability to match that should Ryan win one. To have 3 consecutive coaches win national titles, that means you got a lot of advantages going for you, but also means you've hired well. And so those 2 things are very, very difficult to align.
What's been your impression of Chip Kelly so far?
A little different than what I expected. You get used to seeing a guy as a head coach, And I think he kind of turned into Bill Belichick a little bit at the podium. And you're getting beat up. People are getting upset with you because he was trying to do it differently, especially in the NFL. So you get a little surly with it. And at UCLA, when you've got 10,000 people coming to your games and you've got like a good team. It's not like you're rolling a 4-8 team out there. You're competing at a high level. You're ranked most of the time. You beat USC, your crosstown rival. You're not getting any support. And so I think that just wears on you a little bit as the head coach. But he's very quick-witted. He's like funny. He's engaging. He seems like a guy who literally is like, you know what? Now I'm coaching because I want to coach again. Like I'm enjoying my job. You get into this stuff and eventually you get promoted in life if you're good at what you do to becoming more administration than anything else. And that's essentially what a head coach now in college is. Like you've got to handle your NIL, you've got to be involved in this, your fundraising, your players counselor when they want to leave and they want more money or you got to figure out all these different things. And all of a sudden now, like, well, I can just go back to coaching quarterbacks and drawing up plays and handling that side. I've got a guy as my head coach who lets me do it, who trusts me. Like he seems like a guy who took a deep sigh of relief, a nice big breath. And when he was very engaging in his interviews, he's been engaging in the Woody Hayes. It's been awesome to deal with. Heck, he's on McAfee, like cracking jokes. Like he's a fun guy. And I don't think anybody really saw that side of him probably for the last decade.
Yeah, it is crazy to think about that dynamic because it approaches everything. If ego is going to get in the way, then obviously those two can butt heads in the relationship that they have. That'll go out the window in a hurry. But if that approach is there, man, what a whale of a hire that would be for Ryan Day. Is Will Howard going to be QB1? Because, you see Devin Brown have the comments where he's like, people that are saying like, I'm going to go in the portal, they're all cowards. They live in their mom's basement. I love the fire. I get it. Like you're backed into a corner. This is your time to fight right now, not necessarily in fall. But are you surprised that there has been a little bit of there's been, at least from my standpoint, more discourse about the starting job and that it's not a default that Will Howard is going to win it?
Well, I mean, you looked last year, there was a quarterback battle with Devin Brown. And like the more you've played in a system and the more you just play in general, you're going to gain experience. And unfortunately, Devin got hurt in the Cotton Bowl because I was excited to kind of see what he could potentially do. I'll tell you this, in the first couple practices, everyone has looked pretty good. Like there haven't been any balls that I would say like, it wasn't great. And, part of last year, there was a lot of inconsistencies. And there was some of that this year. Like I would anticipate that Will Howard would be the starter. I would say that's the safe money right now. But I don't think it's this situation where, it's like Will at, 1-3, and then your next odds are like 5-1, 8-1, 20-1. Like I think that it's a lot tighter, especially with Devin Brown. And Ryan's just not going to give a guy a job. Like your job as the head coach is to make sure your team is in the best position to win. And also remember this, like as a transfer guy, and that's why I always give Joe Burrow a ton of credit when he went to LSU. You're integrating a team that already has pre-built relationships and preconceived notions about guys. And Devin Brown is a very popular guy. He's a hard worker. He's charismatic. Like the guy you heard spouting off, in a press conference, like, you think I'm just going to walk away because there's people saying I shouldn't have the job? And, saying a lot of things that kind of a lot of times many players think, and they just don't verbalize it in a media session. So like he's endeared himself to this team. And so if you're a head coach, you just can't give a guy a job because there's an old saying like in the NFL, like you can't fool the room. And you've got to like Will Howard's got to be better than Devin Brown. And like honestly, like Lincoln Keenholz, I know he's thrown in the Cotton Bowl, but I don't think he was anticipating that whole situation playing out the way it did. But I mean, these guys, they're going to push. They're going to push really hard. You've got a couple of really good freshmen there. And the challenge for Ryan is to try to make sure you can have a competition while you're still developing these guys in a similar offense, but with a new OC, integrating some new players into the team, making sure everybody's getting enough reps with all the right groups to be able to adequately judge them. Because players will see all that too. Like, this isn't really a competition. This guy isn't getting the reps or he isn't getting this opportunity. And so to make sure that this is fair, they're all getting equal opportunities. And then as they play better, then maybe you start to parcel it out and things begin to move. But it has to be obvious. And when it's not, that's when it's really hard for a coach because then you have to start making projections and people have to kind of believe it with you. And if guys struggle, that's when those doors open for criticism.
I just want Devin Brown to change his number. That's it. That's all I want.
You
Man,
and, you and a bunch of other people. Connor, you're not alone in saying that, especially quarterbacks. They hate the 33. And I know it's the Sammy Baugh tribute. It just looks weird.
I was number 33 in high school. So my 1 year of playing freshman football, and then I got hurt my sophomore year and didn't play. So I love the number 33. Like, don't get it twisted, but there's just a certain confirmation bias that comes with it. You can't struggle and be number 33 quarterback. You just can't. I get it, but to each their own. Has Hester given you the rundown of how ridiculous Quinshon Judkins is? Has he told you about that?
He's alluded to it a little bit. And I
Okay.
mean, the guy's incredibly intelligent. Like, you've had some brief conversations. I mean, maybe he opens up. He isn't a guy that, seems like, overly gregarious with his personality. He seems like he's business and gets after things. He's been a beast in the weight room. They haven't put pads on yet. It's just been shells the first couple of days. But I mean, I've watched some of his film. And when I was like, this guy wants to come to Ohio State, like, he does know that they have Travion Henderson. So it's not like he's going to get, 400 carries. But I think the fact that he came there, Trey was good with him coming. Both of those guys saying, hey, we'd rather each have like 200 than like load up now with another 400. It's better for the longevity of our career. Like, it speaks to kind of the person that he is, but he's a smart guy too. I think he got into Yale. Like, he's pretty much the total package from what I understand.
Yeah, the only thing you might have to I don't want to say deal with, but yeah, the miles on those legs. That's the only thing I wonder about, like the type of contact he takes on. Took had a ton of carries in high school at Pike Road, but the player itself, I mean, the guy is incredible. Some peak Maurice Clarett vibes, a little bit,
Yeah.
some shades of that. Clarett's one of those guys that I just wish he could have been able to exist in this current NIL world that we're in, because obviously his career plays out a lot differently if that's the case. For those who didn't get to see him be an absolute monster, in his prime, can you just describe how incredible he was before things went off the rails for him?
So we're the same class coming in. I remember telling my dad we were doing like some different drills and like chase drills and like competition stuff, 1 versus 1. And, so I was AJ and I were lifting partners. Then Maurice was kind of the third guy. He was the third dude in our group. And so we'd always try to go against each other. I remember how strong he was. He was just a vocal guy, challenging everybody. He had like the big personality. And I don't know if he was maybe the fastest top end guy you're going to find, but like his change of direction and explosion for a guy that was 6 foot, like 230 pounds, and his quads were like Jim Brown's out there. I remember telling my dad, I'm like, if this is what college football is like, I don't know if I can tackle a guy like that, like consistently. I'm like, we go against each other. He is so stinking quick and it's so much pop. And you should see him when he hits dudes. Like, he has so much power and force behind him. It's just remarkable. And so for anybody, like, you go back and watch that 2002 and some of his highlights of what he did during that season. I mean, the dude had great vision, great explosions, like a force of nature. I think Judkins, I don't know if he has quite the size because it's a different game now, but he has better top end than that. But he is a physical runner, man, and possesses some of those same skills.
Yeah, it's every once in a while you just gotta watch Youngstown Boys at 30 for 30 and just dial into that, because it is incredible. It just kind of makes you wonder, man, what could have happened had he been able to kind of follow that trajectory that we saw from him as a true freshman. How do you feel about the NIL discussions that are being had? Because on one hand, it's great that we see guys, and Ohio State's been a popular topic of this conversation as well, with these guys who are getting those deals lined up, and it's great. And Jackson Dart, who's Judkins' former teammate, he's got a private jet deal now. I mean, like, on the other side of it, though, you kind of wonder, how would you handle dealing with all these distractions? Like, can you put yourself in that position of thinking about how you would have handled that as like an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid?
So it's interesting. Like, usually there is a positive correlation in life between wealth and age, meaning as you get older, you get wealthier. What's unique about athletics, and maybe it's the same like entertainers and things, but they usually have more guardrails around them, is like, it used to be, get drafted 21, 22, you'd get a pot of cash. And it's like, hey, manage this now. And like, well, I don't have 40 years of experience of working. It's not like I'm a 50-year-old man who's finally made all this money. So it was a different situation. So these guys now, like, they're more attuned to things. They're more business savvy than ever before. A lot of coaches and programs do a good job of bringing people in to talk to them about it. And I get a chance to go over there and work out with the guys. And that's mostly what a lot of the conversations are about. Yeah, sure. Like, playing tips here or there, but it's really more just kind of handle life and everything that you're experiencing. And they're getting it younger than ever before. And so making sure you have positive influences around you. The people that are in it for the right things. Hopefully you have a family that's like that. If you don't, it's like, hey, I know a lot of guys who are business partners of mine. Like there are people here that can help you, that want to get you involved in positive things, that want to pour into you and invest into you as a person. And so like it's hard. It's really hard to see that because they're trying to do that while playing college football. But then also like you're still going to class. You still have commitments outside of just practice and meetings. So there's a lot to juggle. And I'll never like besmirch it. I think it's awesome. My dad played 10 years and people was like, man, is he upset that guys make this much money today? I'm like, no. Like he's like, great, good for them. And I've tried to always like be positive with that. Like, hey, just because we didn't have it doesn't mean that I shouldn't be happy that someone else does. So I'm really happy for those guys. The only thing that I worry about with this, and it's the confluence of the transfer portal and NIL coming together. Like I believe guys should always try to get get your market value, but there does come a time where like you have to make decisions. Is it always about the dollar or is it about growth and development? And like trying to balance those and to make sure like just because you're not playing somewhere, maybe you could get a little more money somewhere else and maybe play more early. But is that ultimately the best thing for your career and your development? And it's a little bit of the Nick Saban conversation of, hey man, like get good and then everything comes with that. Not how much am I going to play and how much am I going to make. And if you inverse the order of those, it can have a detrimental impact on guys because there needs to be an understanding of sacrifice, of work, delayed gratification. Like those things are all traits that are admirable and are admirable, and it just takes time sometimes to get there, and everybody's impatient. And so that's just what I worry about player development as like a human being. And if you can't handle it in college, I'm going to tell you right now, I tell you, the next level, it is far more unforgiving. And as you look at guys that, Mac Jones just got traded down to Jacksonville, Florida for a 6th-round draft pick when he was, a first-round pick and starter last year. Like, the league can turn on you quick. And so, like, learning to handle those adversities, I think, is paramount.
What was your best deal when you were in the NFL? Was it just being a part of the Dallas Cowboys? I assume there's just like extra money that comes with that. You don't even have to do like commercials or anything.
I mean, I did some small stuff. Like honestly, I tell people the most money that I probably ever made. And I would say it's probably true for a lot of the guys in my class, like AJ and Schlegel, myself. Like you play linebacker. I mean, it's not like you're an offensive guy. It's not a super sexy position. Now Dallas is a big market, and yeah, you'd be able to make stuff and get your Nike deal and stuff like that. But like doing appearances and signings because you couldn't do it during college. So from the January to May after the season. I mean, I probably made more money in that time off the field doing stuff and appearances and all these different things and speaking engagements than I ever did any other time in my career. And like that, my agent to the point where he's like, our marketing guy's like, don't tell anybody else what you're doing because this doesn't happen at other schools. So just make sure they'll expect me to do this. I was getting this done and I kind of served as my own rep with it and just gauging the market and figuring that stuff out. But it was a lot, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And then being able to kind of continue that stuff, even being a 40-year-old guy and going and doing professional development, speaking work, and things like that. I mean, those things have kind of continued today.
You realize that if you and AJ had been allowed to make NIL money, you guys are both on a Head and Shoulders commercial.
Oh yeah, we would have. I mean, there would have been a lot of cool stuff like that and fun stuff. But honestly, man, like and this is where like the jealousy thing comes in. I don't know if I would have been emotionally mature enough to be able to deal with it. And I say that with a lot of certainty. Um, I dated my wife for a couple of years in college. We dated a year or two out and then got married when I was playing. Like, if all that stuff would have been like thrown at you early on, like, I mean, I'd like to think it's like, hey, I'm going in, I'm going to work, I'm going to stay humble. And yeah, I would have worked out with AJ and we would have continued to grind and work hard. But I don't know if like the way you view adverse situations would have been the same. And I don't know if I would have been able to handle stuff when you're given so much early on. Not that you didn't work for it. I honestly couldn't tell you if my career and really my life would have turned out the way that it ultimately did.
It's easy to just add some money to the bank account and assume everything would have stayed the same, but yeah, you just never
Money,
know.
I tell guys, money and opportunity, like it opens the decision base for you. Like it gives you more options. And options are a great thing when you choose the right ones. But there's a lot of bad ones too. And trying to mitigate that, Connor, it's tough. And that's what with these guys, they're very mature, much more than I was when I was probably 21 years old. But it's still hard, and you can still make some missteps along the way.
Last one for you. Let's peek into the crystal ball. If we're having a state of the Buckeyes conversation at this time next year, where is the program? National champs, searching for a new coach, somewhere in between, beating Michigan, maybe? What does it look like?
Oh, I love the two options. I'm fully binomial here. Like new coach, national championship. Like that's it. I would have said that for certain this team would be in the playoff. I'm of a strong belief they'll have won the conference. Uh, Oregon coming in, they're going to be good. Penn State, I think, is going to be a lot better. I would have said they will have played for a national championship. I believe that this team has the ability to get there, and I believe they have the ability to win it. Um, I hate saying if that's the case, kind of don't feel that good about it. I mean, they're not like they're favorites, but it's not like overwhelming favorites. I mean, I might throw some shekels on them today, and maybe I will, but I'm not willing to put like my kids 529s on them or anything like that quite yet, as I wouldn't for any school, to tell you the truth.
No 2024 Ohio State National Championship tattoo for you just yet. We'll hold off on that.
I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait and be patient on that. And then the other thing too is like people start spouting off. I try not to be overly critical. I try to look at things and be critical of the moment, maybe not of the person and the whole situation. And I hate like throwing things out crazy for expectations because it's publicity is like poison. I know it only kills you if you swallow it, but it just puts a lot of pressure on guys and probably undue pressure that when I was playing, you didn't have avenues for former players to get up on a podium and spew nonsense. So I try not to spew a lot of nonsense, Connor.
You can spew some nonsense at some point down the road here. You'll have plenty of opportunities, no doubt. Bobby, this has been great, man. Really appreciate it. We'll do this again soon.
My pleasure, sir. Anytime.
Will, jersey contest. Teased this before. You have now flipped the jersey. It is a reversible Vanderbilt basketball jersey.
Yes.
I'm very confused.
Yes, we're now locked in. We've gone Ash Ketchum backwards hat mode. Let me go ahead and read the official breakdown of this jersey from our friend Drew Page, who sent this to us. Of course, I have to scroll through 1,000 Kentucky things. Okay. This is straight from Drew. When I was in college, my friend was rooming with a guy whose dad had been doing some work on Memorial Coliseum in Nashville. He just came back with all this practice gear that the Vanderbilt team had given to him. He didn't want it, so we both took it, and now I have it ever since because why would I just throw that away? LOL. So he was telling us one day that Vanderbilt, kind of mid-2000s, left a lot of their practice gear there, right? Practice jerseys, stuff like that. Now, as a person who knows me pretty well, what do you think was the first question I asked him?
Oh gosh, have they been washed?
So you've been given the information. Okay, old Vanderbilt Glory Days basketball practice jerseys. What do you think I asked?
Who could have worn these jerseys?
You're so close. I asked him, y'all got any Festus Azelis in there?
Oh, there we go. I did not have Festus Ezeli at the tip of my tongue, but yes, I was getting there.
I said, y'all got any game or practice worn Festus Ezeli jerseys in there? He said, absolutely. I will wash it. I will send it to you. So I have a practice jersey from Festus Ezeli that he has worn in Memorial Coliseum in Nashville. It is reversible, so you could do kind of a shirts versus skins, like light versus dark, you know what I'm saying? Like, because one side's white, one side's black. So I have Festus Ezeli's very same jersey that he wore during their magical season together.
Wow. Okay, a few things. Do you play ever rec league hoops?
Mm-mm.
With that jersey, you need to start because you go to a rec league hoops game, you go to the YMCA, whatever, local gym, something like that.
Yeah.
You throw on that jersey and someone looks at it and someone gets, Festus Ezeli? Oh yeah, I'm his twin. That's what the kids are saying these days, right?
Yeah.
What up, twin? You just leave it at that and you deadpan. and you let them sit with that information. Then they watch you play basketball and realize that's impossible. But
I'm trash, but I go first overall. That's the thing. I completely handicap whatever team I'm on.
That is incredible. Wow. You should have had him not wash it, actually.
Yeah. I was planning on wearing it. I think he had washed it back in the day, thank goodness. But there's no Festus funk on here that I smell. And so you know what I'm saying? I'm the Festus for the rest of us. So it was so funny because I literally go, hold on. Like, for some reason, I was like, who do I know that played for Vandy back then? And I, of course, thought of, if you guys have ever seen Festus's retirement message he posted from the NBA, I swear, Connor, it's 8 pixels. It looks like when someone's internet connection goes out really bad on Zoom and they're like, but it's a 2-minute highlight video to that, like, butt rock song. It's like, now that you're here, so far away, and it's just
don't sing ever again, please.
Oh, dude, no, it sounds like that because literally it's like he ran it through 3 converters, and the audio's trash and the video's trash.
Oh, nice.
And it's literally like screaming in your ear. And he retired and just posted this video and dipped. And so he has a special place in my heart for the obviously the college days, the Golden State days, and then that retirement video is my favorite retirement thing of all time because he never corrected it. He never addressed why he posted this random video that I think he himself might have made. I don't know, but that's my guy right there, Festus Ezeli.
That's got to be the most random jersey we've come across. You have worn jerseys that you have gotten overseas with strawberries on them, and that is more random than that.
Yeah, and it's functional too. That's the thing. It's like, it's not signed or anything. It's not like game worn or would be really valuable. It's like, this is the perfect spot where it's random, it's authentic, but I don't feel bad wearing it because who really cares, right?
True. Yeah, bring that to a rec league hoops game, man. I'm telling you, you'll get some questions. The conversations alone will make it worth it. Yeah. All right, that might that's going to have. I think that's going to have a significant chance to be able to win this round. Most recent round just finished up in the jersey contest. I think I've got two more jerseys in my closet, so we're nearing an end to this. We will probably be done maybe by the end of the month. By the end of the month, we might be finished with it. Lad of the week, Will. Would you like me to start, or do you want to start?
Go ahead, man.
All right, I'm actually going last of the week.
Okay,
I'm going with Dawn Staley here. Repeat winner, I think. At some point, I've had Dawn Staley as my last of the week, probably. Obviously, huge story on Sunday was the ugly fight at the end of the LSU South Carolina game, SEC championship. I can guarantee you that the league did not want the biggest topic of conversation, national news, to be that, but it was. One coach, as you might have seen, Kim Mulkey, handled all of that in a way that made everyone look worse. And another coach, Dawn Staley, handled that in a way that reminded you that there were actually still adults in the room. Kim Mulkey saying that she wished Cardoso had pushed Angel Reese was exactly what I would have expected from Kim Mulkey, who infamously said that if someone says, I will never send my daughter to Baylor, you knock them right in the face, which is a
She did say that.
It's a tough thing to say under normal circumstances, much less when your school, Baylor, is under investigation for covering up 52 rapes by football players in a 4-year stretch. Tough look all around, probably. Next time, Mulkey, like, all she has to do is just stop when she says in the post-game press conference, no one wants to see that ugliness. If she could have just cut it off right there, we're like, Kim Mulkey, maybe she's like, kind of calm down a little bit. Not really, but at least in this moment, when we thought Kim Mulkey would say something ridiculous, she actually didn't. But of course, she just couldn't really help herself. And, if she had just taken the Dawn Staley approach of being an actual human being by apologizing for that, realizing that both teams were involved, bad luck for everyone. Staley, even on the championship podium, when she's probably really fired up, there's a lot of adrenaline going, had the more logical approach in that moment. And then post-game press conference, she talked about how Flage came to her after the game, apologized, how Staley said that she's a really good person. Things just escalated. She took responsibility, all those different things. Not to get too preachy here, because I do that from time to time. I know I do that. But when faced with conflict moving forward, you can take whatever approach you want. I personally will ask myself, am I taking a Mulkey approach or am I taking a Staley approach?
Yeah.
If it's the former, probably not great. Probably need to take a deep breath. Just calm down. Dawn Staley, a reminder that there is still some decency in the midst of some ugliness that happened on Sunday.
Man, this specific last of the week puts me in such an interesting or tough position because So who started that fight to you?
I saw the clip of the replay with the hair pulling on the block,
Mm-hmm.
where it looked like this was an LSU instigation. I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
whereas or maybe it was like I think it was like Angel Risa like grabbed Cardozo's hair or however it played out, but there was like the defense, like it was like there was then there was at the half court there was like more hair pulling it was, or she got like turned around or something, and then that's when Flau'jae she got like pushed, and then her brother's coming in, and it's just pure pandemonium with all of that.
Her brother coming in, that guy's the lad of the week. That guy was trying to stand up for his sister, bro. They arrested him probably. He was walking out in cuffs, but I respect that because you never know what's going to happen out there.
How did he get through that quickly?
Bro, he was shot out of a gun. If you watch that, he did not care. That is love. But I'll say it like this: it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit deeper than assigning blame and everything. We've seen this in New Orleans, right? Where our guy Dennis Allen came out there, and there was that weird little play at the end of the Falcons game, and he said, "I had no knowledge of that. That's on whatever." Da, 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 da. Well, the other end of that, you have Kim Mulkey, who said, "You know what? I stand by my girls, and if you want to mess with one of us, mess with the big one, because that wouldn't go that way." So it's tough for me to say, okay, Dennis Allen kind of threw his team under the bus, and that's what Kim Mulkey has been. You are scowling at me right now, but that's what Kim Mulkey has been known for. That's the critique of her, kind of like Brian Kelly, which is she throws her players under the bus. No, I actually give her credit because she at least stood with the girls, the ladies at LSU, and said, hey, we're ready if it's come to that. Like, I know that they are fighters and they're not going to back down. Now, is that classy? No. Is it the right way? No. But I'll say this, I think that it's fine to have that chippiness. I think if this was men's sports and someone was saying, oh, maybe go mess with Harold Perkins, it wouldn't be viewed that way, And so I think that at the end of the day, women's sports has to walk this very tightrope where it's, you got to be, respectful and sportsmanship in the lady, but at the same time, you got to play hard. And whereas at the men's sports, we say, it doesn't matter. Do what you got to win. Be tough, be physical, go outside the lines. That's just like people loved Draymond Green until he took it too far. People love Sheed, right? That same behavior in the women's game makes you get turned into a pariah. So I think that in a way she stood up for her players, which is good. In another way, got a little bit too Sandy Ogren-Sandlin there on the podium. Got a little bit too personal with it. That's not what your leader should do. So I do see both sides of it.
Yeah, like I get defending your players. I get that, and I get. I'm not even necessarily knocking. Stuff happens. Stuff happens
right.
in the heat games. Stuff like that. But just what do you think that's promoting by being like, oh yeah, if she's 6'8", I'd like to see her go at her. It's just like that's not really what this is calling for from you in college athletics. And I'd argue that Draymond gets a whole lot of crap for all the stuff that he starts now. And it's very much like we don't celebrate what Draymond does.
Patrick Beverly, that's a better guy. Patrick Beverly, I love Patrick Beverly. He plays hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a different situation when it's the brawl of an SEC championship and you understand the circumstances. There are increased eyeballs.
Tore Russell Westbrook's ACL in a playoff game. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, when men do this stuff, it's seen as tough and you want him on your team. You don't want to play against him, But when women do it and stick up for themselves, it's like classless. And it's immediately, that's classless. There's no place for that in the game. Like I said, if someone took a cheap shot on Jaden Daniels and Brian Kelly said, I'd like to see you try that on Mason Smith, I would stand by that. So why would I change my opinion?
Yeah, I think there are other circumstances surrounding that based on, like what was started, what was led to continue. I get what you're saying. I definitely get what you're saying.
And not that you're wrong. We just there's not a right or wrong way. I'm just saying that's my perspective. And is it fan? Maybe, but I think that's my whole thing is we can't have a double standard. That's what I've always said, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think I think we agree to disagree on this one. But personally, I would have gone with the Dawn Staley approach. That's why she got last of the week and not Kim Mulkey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, mine's super duper easy. My boy Robbie Avila for Indiana State. You know what I'm saying? He did a little partnership with Home Field, which is super cool. He did a whole little photo shoot here in their Indiana State. You know what? Let me go ahead and share this with you. Hold on. He did.
I've seen it. I know exactly
Okay.
what you're talking about. Yes.
You know exactly what I'm talking about? Good.
Yeah.
All right. So now I got to remember how this works. Okay, boom. So point being, he did like a little thing shushing the crowd. You know what I'm saying? And that's what college basketball should be about, man. You know, plenty of people have gone viral, talking about Caitlin Clark. Is she the biggest star? All this different stuff. But college basketball has gotten so wrapped up in, wow, expanding the postseason. Who would have thought, right? The stars of the regular season have kind of gotten diminished. And I think a guy like Robbie Avila is exactly, what this game needs as far as just a goofy guy who, like we've seen it at different points, not just because he's a Caucasian gentleman, but because that's so clearly a college basketball athlete and the type of guy that we used to, laugh about, cheer for, that used to make March Madness great. I think we've gotten so close to the business of everything, we lose the sight of like, this game is really about the players that this is their dream. You know what I'm saying? Getting these, what an NIL deal used to be, what Bo Nix was getting Milo's sweet tea deals and all this stuff was, you got a hometown brand. It works for you. It works for the business. Go do something really cute and nice. It's going to help everybody. That's what Home Field did with Robbie Avila. So I wish we could get back to that. I wish we could get to a guy plays hard, makes a name for himself, capitalize off of it, not recruiting services boost a guy up for going to their camps, and then the guy gets paid and then goes to a school. And so I think just good guy NIL is the message here. But lad of the week, Robbie Avila, looking forward to seeing the boys this tournament season.
And I think it's difficult too for college athletes to have apparel deals that aren't like they're if a school is a Nike school or something like that to do stuff outside of that. And I realize there's still plenty of examples of clothing companies like the Libby Dunn Viore thing is everywhere. I can't watch a single YouTube video without that pre-roll ad. It's just the absolute worst. You buy 2 pairs of shorts, you hear about it for the rest of your life. But it's really difficult, I think, to do some of that stuff. So to be able to navigate that, like Home Field did, mad respect for them for being able to get that done with somebody that is become the talk of college basketball. I mean, it's incredible to think about. And yeah, I mean, the Home Field jerseys that they just dropped, oh my goodness. First time that they've dropped jerseys before. I think they got LSU. It was part of one of the first, like they have 5 or 6 jerseys that just dropped. And I looked at those and thought to myself, now there is something that I would have spent reckless amounts of money on as a college student to be able to get my hands on.
And I will.
And I probably will. I don't think they have any IU stuff, despite the fact that obviously Home Field is founded by IU folks. So we'll see.
Wow. So hot seat for them. They got Indiana State, not Indiana.
It's ahead of the tournament. You're trying to get the tournament teams involved. I get it. I get it from that standpoint.
Why didn't they get Indiana then?
Do we need to go there? That's rude. That's really rude.
Listen, Connor O'Gara will take a brand deal for Indiana. I'm here to tell you guys right now. Get him some swag. He'll get there. You know what I'm saying? He's the best thing IU's got right now. You know what I'm saying? So let him get some swag. He'll get after it. All right.
I own multiple pieces of Indiana Home Field apparel because of you, because you bought them for me. My hoodie, my Indiana script hoodie that I wear. I wear Indiana basketball tee from Home Field as well. Yes, make it happen, Home Field. But yeah, I think that'll do it. We have lots of great content that's going to be coming up on SaturdayDownSouth.com. Lots of college basketball stuff. North Carolina just went legal with sports betting. So there's a lot of different things that we're being able to do with that. So you should check out SaturdayDownSouth.com. If you have not, leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on the app formerly known as Twitter, @the SDS Pod, @SatDownSouth, @CJ O'Gara, @GoSoHard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.